we have to go through the natal chart interpretation and the transits and get an overview and a time perspective. And we have another layer to add to be more specific from this time on. So there's sort of just layers we add on here. You have to start with a natal chart. Look at the point systems, then you got to look at the planets and their signs, houses, and aspects. And then once you got a sense of that, then I like to compare take the time to compare the small bio to the natal chart to see how it works for the natal chart before I look at the same thing with the transits. Then we go to the 90-year graph with Saturn. Then we do the 8-year graph, 4 years backwards, 4 years forwards, to see all the main outer planets, to see what kind of challenges they're presenting. And then we're going to add, the last thing is a 2-year graph from a month before now. So we're doing this in February, so we do January. We would start January 1st of 2019, and then we do it for the next 2 years. And when we do the aspects, we'll do this. I'll show you how to set this up. So we've done this before, but we're going to just set up a transit, and we're going to look at the planets Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Those are the transiting planets we're going to watch. We'll watch them as they affect the Moon, the Venus, the Mercury, the Sun, the Mars, the Jupiter, and the Saturn, and the angles. So we're not watching aspects to the outer planets. We're watching the outer planets to the inner planets, and then we're watching. I usually do this with the stress factors. So I'll use the conjunction, squares, oppositions, but on my printouts I include the semi-squares and the 135s, sesquiquadrates, just so there's the 8-point sensitive points of the aspects pattern, and I watch those ones. I don't watch for the trines or the sextiles or those things. Anything that's not a stress factor works easier, so it's enough. But it lets you get alert and it allows us to tie down to see what's immediately going on this month, next few months, next year in more detail. So, okay, this is lady's chart, and her pattern type. You look at the pattern type, you see the empty trine. There's no area that's an empty. This empty area is not a sextile. There's no place that trine that divides this chart in half. There can be a sextile, but there isn't in this case. But since there's no sextile divide or greater dividing the chart on the other part, it becomes just the locomotive. So we have the locomotive, which is someone has a driving disposition to do things. Yes, it's like there's a need to fill what's missing, just like the bundle that had a small group with all their interests were in a small area. Here, the interests are very well rounded around the chart, except there's 3 areas. There's an empty trine, there's an empty part that's missing, and there's a tendency, there's a drive to try and fill that. There's a feeling I have to fill that empty part, fill what's missing, get what's not there. And this is the locomotive, and there's a handle on the locomotive, and it's the focus point on the locomotive. It would be the moon here, because it's moving clockwise into the empty trine. It's moving as it was with the houses. There'll be a drive to push this for the moon to feel. So she's going to feel her needs and feel she needs to fix this. She needs to improve that. She needs to get that. So there's going to be a drive with her basic feelings to do this. And with the moon in Aries, which we'll get to, it's going to make that even more impulsive and more assertive. What she needs to do. Okay. The phase of the moon, we'll look at the opposition to Virgo, and the aspects, right? I didn't adjust my pattern up here. Calculations. Okay. So it's 135.47. Okay, so 135 is the exact gibbous moon. So it's on the waning half. It's not the way, it's 130, it's just before it gets to the waning gibbous. It's the waning full moon. It's the last point of the full moon distance. Okay, so we've got the waning full moon here, anywhere from 135 to 180 to 135, from the full moon into 135 is in this waning full moon phase. And there's a strong distinction between the goals I want to do and the needs that I feel I have. So those illuminate each other fairly well. It's it's one sign that is still close enough. It's still in that waning full moon phase. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So her sun sign, it's in Virgo. She's a Virgo with an Aries moon and a Capricorn rising. So when we look at this, we're seeing the earth and the fire. 3 earth, 2 points, 2 points for the moon and fire. So this is the practical, down to earth, tactile person with a strong sense of impulse. So you see this practical, smart, impulsive person. You're not going to see you're not going to expect a lot of sympathy. There's not a person who's going to be, it's not a watery moon. There's not water here. There's not even air here. There's not even air in these. It's about doing things and being around. It's a practical, physical dynamic. But the rulerships are Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. Those are the planets ruling the signs. You have the daylight increasing is 3 points, nighttime increasing is 2. Not a big difference. Daylight is greater is 3 points, nighttime it's 4 points, nighttime is greater is 1 point. So just by nature, it's a very self-centered person who's got to do her own thing. A strong sense of independence and of making things happen. It's still going to be the practical, the earth, the mutable earth Virgo, ruled by the Mercury. So the thinking, the communication, having to express oneself, having to perfect things. And the moon in Aries, the impulse to do it now, to go on impulse. So the impulse is like fools rush in, and the Virgo is trying not to be the fool. So there's the two sides within that. And the Capricorn ascendant is going to have a fairly serious personality, fairly controlled or cautious image, self-image. So responsible, cautious, measured, gauged, Saturnine. So these are, okay, so the other side is not the air, not going to be someone who starts the communication right away, not going to be someone, and not the water. So there's not going to be, you're not going to get this emotional quality coming through right away either. Okay. Now remember, whatever chart you have, whatever combinations they have, that's normal for them. It's not normal that other people will be overly emotional or other people will be overly, like, this is normal for them. It's their way of processing, her way of processing. So, okay. Now when we go through we do this initial sun, moon, ascendant just because it's the first things, first impressions you're going to get. We're going to do them deeper as we go along, but it gives us somewhere to start with to be able to make sense of the point, the complete points of all the planets. So she has 3 points in Aries. I am 0 Taurus, 1 in Gemini, I think, 1 I feel, 0 I will in Leo, 4 I analyze. So there's the Virgo and Aries. I am, I analyze. 2 in Libra, I balance. 1 I desire, 1 I understand, 1 I use. Okay, so those are just the keywords in the sign breakdown. So again, we're seeing the analyze and the being and the I am and the being. The Virgo is are the two predominant ones. That's the sun and moon. That's not, they're reinforcing each other consistently. When we look at daylight increasing to darkness increasing, it's 5 points daylight is increasing, 9 points darkness is increasing. So certainly there's a need to belong or be involved or be responsible more than there is the push to be alone or be on one's own or be independent. Okay, it's moving towards even if she's very independent, she's still going to be moving towards belonging and participating and being involved and affecting others and being affected by others. Here we have daylight is greater 9, darkness is greater 5. So here, the momentum, before the momentum is moving towards belonging and towards being involved more, but her basic nature is 9 points daylight is greater. This is me, this is what I'm doing. And it's not quite so involved with other people. So it's not as involved with people as she is strong in herself. But even though she's strong and independent in herself, she's still going to be, because of the darkness increase, she's still going to have a momentum to do things for others, to be involved in her own way. Okay, so she might push for relationships, the darkness increasing, but she's going to push in her own way and have her own way of doing things. So even though she tries to get involved, she can be very fussy and very not quite so. She might give the idea of becoming involved, but at the same time, she would be very. When her independence would be threatened, or her freedom, her sense of freedom would be restricted, she would have a strong reaction to that. Okay, 1 winter, 4 spring, 5 summer, 4 autumn. So winter is the least active time. Summer is the most, but really evenly spread. Spring, summer, fall. All those are her active times. We get to cardinal, fixture, mutable. 7 cardinal, 1 fixed, 6 mutable. So distinctly driving, 7 cardinal, 6 mutable, very perceptive, manipulative, very adaptable. So kind of pushy and adaptable. Be able to adjust, change, go through changes, and the minute something's changing, she gets sense of changes going on. As soon as she senses a change going on, she's going to push to make something happen. And she'll push to make that happen. And as long as it's going along, that's fine. As long as she's on the go, improving things, that's good. But as soon as there's disruptions and things, she's going to sense the change and be ready to change to the next thing. There's not the fixity. So there's not an attitude that, by sign, her attitudes are not geared to be fixed or be consistently in one place at one thing. It's more likely to push to change. Things are changing. I got to change things. I got to make this happen. I got to change this. I can't just stay here. Not fixed. Okay, we get to the fire, water. Sorry, I got my camera ends up.